Final assembly of the 1970 Mustang street version begins with cementing the dual exhaust system in place in the bottom of the chassis. Note that we have already cemented in place the chassis onto the bottom of the passenger compartment and the body. Place CA or any adhesive of your choice where the dual exhaust system is to be attached to the bottom of the chassis and hold in place for a few seconds. The next section to attach is the rear axle and springs assembly. Again, cement in place using CA before proceeding to cement the rear shock absorbers to the springs. The rear axle and springs assembly are one piece. Make sure the piece is positioned correctly on the chassis or the rear wheels will not sit properly. Now we are going to cement the rear shock absorbers to the springs position of our assembly. You should cement the shock absorbers individually to minimize movement. Place a drop or two of CA into the hole where one of the rear shock absorbers is going to be positioned. Using a pointed tweezer or any convenient tool, place the first shock absorber in position. According to the instructions, each of the shock absorbers have to point in a specific direction on the springs. Hold the piece in place for a few seconds to allow the CA to partially cure. Note that this piece is small enough that if you don't hold it in place, it will move. Repeat this process for the second rear shock absorber. Pieces to hold the spoiler to the rear of the Mustang is cemented onto the spoiler using CA. After applying one support, repeat the process for the second support. Front end pieces and all of the engine compartment parts will now be cemented in place in this section of our video. We are using Tamiya thin cement for this phase of the build because it will be easier to apply the cement with a brush rather than with a toothpick. The first piece that we are attaching is the support for the hood that is towards the rear of the engine compartment. After test fitting the radiator horn assembly and its supporting piece, we are ready to cement both pieces in place. Again, using Tamiya's thin cement, glue them in place. Position them correctly, or else the hood will not close properly. Continue with the engine compartment. It is now time to cement the hose connecting the radiator to the engine block in place. This part is quite difficult to hold and position in the small space provided, so have good light and good eyes. When satisfied with the appearance of the hose, apply more thin cement to both ends of the hose to keep it right where you want it. The last part to put on the engine is the air filter. Glue and hold in place for a minute or two, making sure that the air filter is level. Put any tool on top to keep this part level. Put everything aside to cure. The grille with the front lights piece is the next part to cement in place. I am back to using CA so that we can achieve a strong bond between this part and the body. This front piece looks easy to install, but that is not the case. It doesn't want to stay on the body very easily, as it has few points to attach to the front of the body. As I was trying to hold it in place, I actually removed the front lens from one of the headlights. In order to achieve the bond and have the front end adhere correctly, after applying the CA a second time, I used CA spray accelerant to fast cure the adhesive and secure the part in place. I even added more CA after a few seconds to both sides of the part where it attached to the body. During this part of the final assembly, I accidentally removed one of the wheels. You can see here that I replaced it before setting the body aside to cure. After cementing the rear panel under the trunk of the body in place, I am completing the attachment of the spoiler to the rear of the body. Test fit the spoiler for placement. Use CA to cement this in place. After cutting the mirrors from the chrome sprue, we are going to cement them into the side mirror holders. Place CA into one of the holders and position the mirror into it. Note that these are very tiny and slippery, so be careful not to lose it. Repeat this process for the other mirror holder. Attaching the side mirrors to the 1970 Mustang body is a frustrating task. Cursing is allowed. After putting the CA on a mirror, it slipped out of the tweezer so many times that I lost count, that I had to refresh the CA glue at least once to ensure we could get a proper bond to the body. Place the side mirror where you believe is the best location on the door and hold in place several minutes so that the adhesive partially cures. Otherwise, the mirror will fall off. I put a tiny amount of adhesive on the top of the mirror holder. Repeat this process for the other side mirror, making sure it is placed in about the same position as the first side you did. Put aside to cure everything you have done in this section. Video of the finished model is shown here. Note we removed the hood so you can see the motor and other components in the engine compartment. Since all the paints used on the exterior of this build are glossy, there is no need to apply an additional gloss coat to the model.